The wildfires are tearing through parts of Indonesia's Kalimantan, destroying crops and plantations as the dry season intensifies.
The blazes are also blanketing communities around Pontianak in thick haze, raising concerns as conditions turn increasingly dry. Residents say strong winds are fanning the flames and helping the fires spread quickly, making them difficult to contain.
Untuk beberapa hari ini untuk api mulai membesar itu mulai dari jam 2 sampai sore karena mengikuti arah angin, jadi perkembangan api itu sangat cepat sekali untuk terjadinya kebakaran lahan sekitar kompleks Taman Wisata.
Kondisi paling parah kemarin kapan, Pak?
Untuk kondisi yang paling parah 2 hari yang lalu kita karena asapnya tebal, itu pun belum pernah terjamah oleh api, jadi sangat besar sekali.
The Forestry Ministry says more than 107,000 hectares of land were burned across Indonesia in the first 6 months of this year. That's a 110% increase from the same period in 2023, when El Nino last had a significant impact on the archipelago.
This year's El Nino is intensifying, bringing drier conditions and a more severe dry season. In Pulang Pisang, residents say the lack of rain is making the fires even harder to put out.
We are now joined by Dr. David Ubilava, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Sydney. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. So it's not only the wildfires, but the El Nino to extreme heat and floods. I mean, when these shocks are happening across different crops and countries, how serious is the threat to global food security and prices?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It can be quite serious, although it's very difficult to predict exactly how things will play out in months to come. We are seeing very strong El Nino early in the season. It's unprecedented. So there is no doubt that we are going to have strong El Nino as the year progresses. Question then is, how will that manifest into local weather conditions? As we can see in the previous segment, that there is some of it already happening. And if history suggests, probably we haven't even seen the worst parts of it, because a lot of these effects will start continuing in this year and go into the next year as well. So impacts depends on the region. Southeast Asia, Australia, these are the regions that usually are dry and hot during El Nino years, but we've got parts of Americas where we have excessive rains. So whether these will have some sort of negative impact on production and therefore push prices upward, time will tell, but there is a good chance that something like that will happen. Now, all of this is happening just after the other crises that have been going on around the globe from the beginning of this year. So overall, there is a most likely scenario would be reduced output, increased prices in some of the key cereals, which is something we typically think and worry about because that's the main source of calories globally.
Okay, Professor, Asia's rice farmers and Europe's crops are at different points, in the cycle right now. Here in this part of the world, crops are either flooded or they have no water. In Europe, the crops are planted in spring, so it's months before harvest. So does Asia, because of that, have a bigger problem, or is this impact, simply delayed for Europe?
That's correct. So generally, when it comes to El Nino impact, Asia is, and especially East and Southeast Asia, is probably one of the region that is affected the most. And you're exactly right. So there is this crop cycles that are different across regions. So that could be good news, because even if crop in one region is affected negatively, there could be some kind of bumper crop or good output in other regions. Now, that's good news in terms of prices. There is some sort of price stabilization happening across the globe, but it's bad news for farmers who are negatively affected by these weather conditions, because on the one hand, they have bad harvest, and on the other hand, they are not paid as much for it. So the answer to your question depends on which region we are talking about and which group of people within that region we are talking about.
And Professor, beyond extreme weather, the millions are also facing food insecurity in conflict zones, and from Gaza to Ukraine to Sudan. How much of today's food insecurity is man-made?
Well, it's a combination of things, right? So we mentioned food insecurity. Earlier this year, we were talking about how the closure of Strait of Hormuz has stopped ships from entering and exiting the strait, which has reduced the access to fertilizer. That in turn has negative repercussions for production. So there is a combination of things that climate affects our behavior. Our behavior impacts well in the long term climate, but in the short term what we produce, and these things sort of sometimes work together. So this year is a bit of a perfect storm because things were not already great to begin with, and now we are having this developing El Nino, which are only going to make things worse. Now, how much of what will happen can be attributed to El Nino is a different story, because sometimes it's really hard to identify the exact root cause of given price increase or given shortage, because it could be many factors are playing the role here.
Okay, so when you put all these pressures together, how much of a buffer does the global food system actually have right now?
So things are not too bad. So every month there are these reports about how much is production, what's the demand, what's the exports, and those kind of things. And while there is slight decline in those numbers, it's not something that would be a cause for panic. Now, a bigger question then is how it is redistributed, right? So whether we are talking about relatively high income or perhaps even exporters of certain crop, they're probably not too big of an issue. But if we're talking about low-income countries that are dependent on imports of given cereals or other commodities, that's where these things can be a bit tougher than in normal years.
Right.
So I
that's
guess
my
the answer to your question is very.
Yeah. I hear you, Professor. Sorry to interrupt. So that leads really to my next question. Vietnam right now flooded, Thailand facing a drought. We know that rice export prices are rising. Could we see, export restrictions very soon, you think? And which, you were talking about, importers, which rice importers in Asia will feel, such restrictions, the most?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because often those export bans follow when government fears that there is shortage of production and prices are about to grow, and so then the one way to sort of protect their people is by imposing export bans, so that more of the given crop, rice in this instance, stays within the country, which is good news within the country, but bad news globally, because there is less of the commodity that sort of goes on the global market. So your question, if El Nino and El Nino related weather shocks sort of manifest themselves as projected, then there is good chance that we will see some of those restrictions imposed. And from the global trade perspective, that's going to make things worse, because there'll be less of the crop available internationally. So especially the regions that depend on rice imports, that they will struggle and pay the price for it.
Okay, Professor Ubilava, thank you very much for your insight this morning. That was Dr. David Ubilava, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Sydney.